Sarah, the number one unsolicited comment I get is I go in each weekend to a different church around the country, and they almost always say, it is so good to see IMB and NAM finally doing something together.
I love that.
And let me give you an example of where it works great. Ukraine war, Afghanistan. We already have ministries on the ground internationally through our International Mission Board people, but then the refugees come to the United States. Well, see, we've got a natural bridge now. They come to the United States. Send Relief domestically or nationally kicks in when Send Relief International has been the entry point there. So it's really been neat. That's just one example of working together in that regard. Now, it's not easy. The two corporate bodies are very different. I mean, you think about the International Mission Board in over 100 countries, all the security, all the issues they have to deal with.
The logistics,
different from the two. And the North American Mission Board is most of all about church planting. And it's been Kevin Ezel's passion. God has used him. It's been a movement of God, what's happening there. Right. So we're kind of the man in the middle. Somebody gave me a picture in the early days of Send Relief of Kevin Ezel, president of NAM, and Paul Chitwood, president of IMB, and they're driving two school buses down the interstate. And I'm holding on between the two school buses for dear life as they're flying down the road together and trying to keep this thing together. But they're great guys and really thankful to have the time with them.
And you've had a very successful run in these
Well, the
5
Lord
years.
has blessed it. Amazed how He's blessed it.
Welcome to the GC Collective podcast, brought to you by the California Southern Baptist Convention. From local missions to global impact, we explore the vision, passion, and heart behind our collective movement in California and around the world. Where better together isn't just a motto, it's how we maximize our impact in fulfilling the Great Commission.
Hello, California Southern Baptist family. Welcome back to the GC Collective podcast. Exciting. We're on location, Pete.
Yes, we're actually not in Fresno. We are in beautiful San Diego, California.
It is beautiful. This climate is perfect.
Just to let you guys know, this is not Jason Robertson, okay? If you're just listening to this is actually our dear brother, Dr. Bryant Wright.
Yeah, from Send Relief.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And we have just wrapped up the Serve Tour in San Diego.
Right.
What do we know about the Serve Tour, Pete?
Sure. The Serve Tour actually had 40 different outreaches and different kind of projects that were not just supposed to be one-time projects, but they were projects that were supposed to be able to continue to minister and to help the churches to connect to their community, to share Jesus, right? And so we had over 700 volunteers, and a couple hundred people actually come to faith just in one of the projects. And, you know,
Awesome.
I had a really hard time in getting this guy away from the project. He was so tempted to grab a skateboard. We were at a skate park, and they were going down this pool that was empty, right, at the skate park. And he was just drooling to get his hands on the skateboard, right?
Pete, there were some men out there that looked like they were as old as me.
They were
yeah.
old.
I was just dumbfounded.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, you know how many people received Christ at that event?
How many?
25.
That's fantastic.
Unbelievable.
25 people.
That's
great.
great.
That park, I mean, it was so full.
Oh.
We had to park on the other side of the
It was
freeway to get in.
Unbelievable, the number of
Right.
people that were there. That was great.
Yeah. And that was a bunch of multiple churches working together, but primarily New Vision Church, where Pete Contreras is the pastor. And so it's very inner city type of ministry, and just amazing work. They had a couple like professional skaters there.
There was a 12-year-old girl that was awesome. She was amazing. We'll see her in the Olympics one day.
I believe so.
I believe so.
Right. Yeah.
We might have to spend another podcast talking about all the different projects and all the things that
There
happened.
were many projects, and here's what's so great about the Serve Tours. It's mobilizing all kind of churches, realizing the churches are going to be here long after the Serve Tours, but all kind of volunteer teams come in, love on the city with all kind of service projects. The cred of the local church jumps tremendously during that time. So then, long after the Serve Tours are over, these churches have many more ministries that have been really enriched in the time here. So that's what's so good about doing it.
Well, and we had people that were here from out of state. Oklahoma, I know, was present.
They come to help.
There were people that go to every surf tour that's being held across the nation. Apparently, I mean, they're just, that's their thing. That's what they're called to do, so they do that. But then there were people here from Orange County. There were people here from Inland Empire. They were here from other churches from the state of California, working alongside the churches here, doing demolitions in restaurants and doing work in schools. And one of my favorites, and I'm so bummed out that I actually didn't get to taste the hamburgers, was this. They had these vans with a tailgate with the barbecue in the back. Was that actually your idea? Wasn't my idea.
I wish I could take credit for it, though,
because they're giving hamburgers to all their community and
it
sharing
has
Jesus.
Been huge in every serve tour now, and the number of people that have come to Christ through that has been absolutely amazing. I'll tell you a quick story. When we were in Chicago last year, I took two of my grandsons. One was 12 then, one was 16, and they were taking part in that. And there was tacos in a very Hispanic community there in Chicagoland. And my 16-year-old grandson, through an interpreter, led 3 young Hispanic teenagers to Christ as they were munching on tacos together. And as a granddaddy, man, that was about as great a joy as you can have to see that. So
for sure,
it is a wonderful way to open doors everywhere we go. It's one of the most popular projects that we do.
How come we didn't have tacos?
I don't know. I know. I couldn't figure out cheeseburgers in San Diego, tacos in Chicago, but hey, it worked.
It worked.
Yeah.
Now, I'll tell you, the other project that I thought was pretty amazing was one of the churches where Steve is the pastor at. We actually were there in the morning. Ocean
we started out the day there.
Ocean View Church. They went out and they did door to door. And I actually have, one of the little Jesus.
The baby Jesus.
Yeah, the little Jesus. They were using these little Jesus as a way to go and introduce themselves and say, we want to give you a little Jesus.
Yeah.
And so from there, they started gospel conversations, had a lot of people make professions of faith. And yet still tomorrow, because today's actually a Saturday, right? Tomorrow on Sunday, they've invited their community. They hit, I think, was it 7,000 homes?
I think he said that.
Like
that is incredible. What that church has done in reaching out that community. And there's no telling for years to come.
Right.
People are going to show up at their church because of their reaching out.
They've actually, with the people that they have in their church and the people that they've actually contacted, they've almost reached their whole community in that area.
Yeah.
That is incredible. And the pastor did such a good job at training the people that came to know how to have a gospel conversation and then to do the follow-up.
Right.
That's right.
And so
and asking how they could pray for them. That was really so huge.
Absolutely. Great. Absolutely. I loved it. You know what's one other thing that I loved? Your message tonight that you did at the final rally that we did. It's a lot of times people do a lot of good things because they want to be good people. Yeah. But you reminded them tonight with the scripture that it's not about just the good things that we do.
That's right.
But it's really about knowing Jesus.
It's the relationship with the Lord that's the preeminent thing. And the good things should be a sign of our salvation. The good things should flow out of our salvation.
Right.
Not to earn the favor of God, but just in
That's
gratitude for what God has done for us through Christ. Then we do these good things.
That's right.
As we're so thankful to the Lord for that.
I think we can't go on talking about this without saying thanks to a few people. Of course, the pastors that led the projects, the people that
they've done a ton of preparation,
right? So much work. But then there was 2 guys here locally, and that is Mike Carlisle, who was the former director of missions of San Diego, and now Phil Harrington, who's the current director of missions of the association.
2 good men,
amazing men. And then on your staff, Sammy.
Yeah, Sammy is such a great leader. So winsome, and
yes.
He has learned so many different communities and really blended in, and he's great.
Right. I mean,
joy to serve with him.
For us at the state convention, just to come in and partner and try to just, I told my team, add fuel to the fire that's already there.
That's right.
And to just be able to do some of that is so good. The Lord wins.
Amen.
The Lord wins with all of this. It's really cool.
And Pete, I love the fact that Sin Relief is all about serving the churches, because the churches are going to be there long after a serve tour occurs. The churches are going to be there long after a crisis, such as the LA fires or the hurricanes we had in the Southeast this year. We want the churches get to be seen as the hero. And not that we're trying to put them before Jesus, obviously, but just that people realize these churches in this community care about us.
That's right.
And then they have the opportunity to share the gospel.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah,
Amen.
which is a great transition to
Okay.
the topic of the day.
Thank you.
As much as we would love to make this about the Serve Tour, we're actually here to talk about Send Relief.
Yes, okay.
And I think that, I don't know if Send Relief is new, but before we get to that, let's hear about you. Who are you? Are you Dr. Wright? Are you Bryant Wright?
Well,
and how did you get here?
I appreciate these honorary doctorates. I only have 2 honorary doctorates.
Only?
I mean, that's more
Well,
than...
but I didn't earn it, is what I'm saying. But people say you did earn it.
Actually, I think when you get an honorary one, that is actually more earned than when you go sit. It's as having been a guy that got one from a seminary, having sat through the seminars and written the book, getting an honorary one, I think that says a lot about how God's used you in ministry.
Well,
and your faithfulness.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that one of the most shock days I ever had is when chairman of the board of trustees at my alma mater, the University of South Carolina, called and said that Carolina was going to give me an honorary doctorate.
Wow.
A state university.
Wow.
That was really,
Yeah.
that was really, I just really was shocked.
Yeah.
That's great.
For your
But
ministry work?
Yeah, just what
That's
had happened through
incredible.
Johnson Ferry and the mission work around the world and things like that.
Beautiful.
So it was really a wonderful blessing and very thankful.
Yeah.
But I was stunned.
Yeah. Good for you. I need
So
to get an honorary one.
where'd you get your second honorary?
That was through a ministry we've called World Links Ministry that has a seminary that they have started years ago in Madrid, Spain.
Come on.
And we had supported so much in our local church in Atlanta, that ministry, and so they gave me an honorary doctorate as well. But
That's great.
you know, you get these things, you just kind of dumbfounded that they occur. So really, I don't use doctor. I just go by Bryant. Even at Johnson Ferry, when I was pastoring all those years, the teenagers called me Bryant. I just thought that was better.
Sure.
Well, how'd you get into this role then?
Great question.
Thank you.
All right. I was a founding pastor at a church in Atlanta and got to stay 38 years. Not many church planners get to stay. We started in a doctor's office there in North Atlanta and just got to grow with the church. And then I was really sure God was calling me to hand off the leadership of the church to a younger man. And thankfully, that went wonderful. He's doing a terrific job. Great gifted preacher and leader. And just, he is so good with the culture of the church. You know, Peter Drucker says that culture trumps strategy when it comes to leadership. And so many search committees overlook the importance of the guy blending with the culture, understanding the culture, connecting with the culture. So he is doing good. Well, I was coming to the time when he was coming in view of a call, and you'll kind of get a kick out of this. So my wife and I were getting away at the beach for a few days just to reflect and think about what was coming. And we got almost to the beach rental, and she says, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I don't want to retire. I'm definitely called to retire from Johnson Ferry after 38 years, but hope there'll be something in ministry. I don't know what it is." She says, "Well, I know how much you enjoy leadership, and I don't want to be the whole focus of your leadership."
Oh.
And we laughed.
Now, I'll just tell you, I had lunch with them today.
we laughed.
And his
I mean,
wife said that she didn't say it that way.
Yeah,
she was much
she
sweeter.
said she said it a lot nicer. But she didn't want me to be just focusing on her from a leadership standpoint, which is very understandable. So about 20 minutes later, I had 2 suitcases in my hand going into the beach rental, and Paul Chitwood, the president of the International Mission Board, called and wanted me to consider leading their compassion and relief ministries around the world. And they had a wonderful leader, but they wanted somebody that would be a preacher, be out in the churches, kind of carrying the banner for that. And then we began to talk. I asked him, I said, "Well, have you ever thought about joining with the North American Mission Board with all their projects of compassion and relief?" And he said, "Well, not really seriously, but I'll pray about it."
This was your idea?
Well, I just suggested to him.
No kidding.
And so Paul said,
He's the leader of leaders for sure.
Well, Paul said, "I'll pray about it." And to Paul's credit, he reached out to Kevin Ezell, and within about a month or so, they had come to an agreement that they then took to the executive committee. It's the first time ever that the International Mission Board and North American Mission Board have decided to have a joint ministry together.
It's
And
brilliant.
So they asked me to be the first president. I was really appreciative of this opportunity. I told them at this stage of life, Because then I was 67 years old. I said, I feel like my calling here is going to be a shorter chapter than 38 years at Johnson Ferry, mainly just to get the ministry underway.
Right.
So these 5 years have really been a time of introducing sin relief to churches throughout our convention, and really have enjoyed doing that.
Now, I did read the news that you have officially announced retirement.
That's right. This is my second retirement. I've got the retirement syndrome. But I'm really thankful for these 5 years, and really feel God has called me to get it underway, and thankfully it is going. I don't think the average church member still knows about sin relief like we hope they will over time. But I sure think the pastors in our convention are becoming more and more aware of sin relief.
So California Southern Baptists, when they hear SEND, I think they think of SEND Network.
That's
Wouldn't you say so,
right,
Pete?
right.
And
Which
so
is
when
the
we
church planning focus.
Right.
Yeah.
So when we say SEND relief, can you explain, kind of break that down a little bit for our listeners?
Well, to tell you how it happened, the International Mission Board had what was called Baptist Global Response. It was kind of like sin relief. But because NAM had started sin relief to work with the disaster relief teams, they had been going for a few years, and a lot of people knew that name.
Right.
And they also were very excited about Sin Network with the church planning. So working off that Sin name, Paul and Kevin just felt like that'd be the name to go with.
So you did it on purpose.
It was definitely a very specific decision in
Okay.
that regard. Yeah.
And so I know that there's sort of 5 pillars that are part
There
of SEND
are.
relief.
We want to strengthen communities. That's a lot of global hunger focus, building water wells in third world areas where there's no clean water, helping areas of poverty have their communities be strengthened, and ministry to refugees. And, with immigration being so controversial now in America, what a lot of people forget is refugees are legal immigrants. And, here's the way to, I think, all Bible-believing Christians want to understand. The church has the government has one role in deciding on the immigration policies and enforcing those policies, but the church has a different calling.
That's right.
Our calling is to love people with the love of Jesus.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Anyone that crosses paths, and biblically, Old Covenant, New Covenant, care for the stranger, care for the alien. That is care for the refugee, care for the immigrants. That's what we're called to do. Right. So the government has a role. They've got to fulfill their role.
Sure.
But the church has a different role.
And that's
and
the
I
love
think we
of
need to
wherever they might be, right? Whether it's
That's
here
exactly
or
right.
international, our job is to tell people about Jesus,
That's
love them in
exactly
Jesus'
right.
name. Right.
That's exactly right.
Right.
It really is. So refugee ministry is huge with Sin Relief. And some of our ministry centers nationally focus almost exclusively, maybe that's too strong a word because they're doing all these different areas, but it's the major focus. At Clarkston in Atlanta, it's one of those areas the federal government designated one of the 7 major areas in America where refugees go. And so you got all these nationalities and people groups represented in that one little zip code there, and we have a ministry center there.
Yeah.
And so each ministry center domestically has a focus of one of these 5 areas. The third area is children and families, and we want to help churches develop foster care and adoption care ministries within their church.
Yes.
You wouldn't believe, in whatever community you're in, how many foster care children are nearby.
Right.
And we want churches to be out there leading the way in that regard. And then fourth is battling human trafficking. I think it's probably really a modern form of slavery.
Sure.
Where these young girls get trapped, and I mean they are trapped in that kind of lifestyle. So the rescue there, it's our smallest ministry. It's very labor intensive. You can just imagine with the emotional trauma that these young girls have gone through, you need really one counselor, a person serving in this ministry for almost every girl that is rescued.
Wow.
So it's small.
Yeah.
It's small, yet in California, or at least in Los Angeles area, that's one of the...
It's a major focus there.
It's a major
in the ministry
ministry
center there.
Right.
It really is.
Right.
And Atlanta's a huge area because busiest airport in the world, and you just got all kind of folks that are coming in there. But it's a terrible, terrible evil in our world. And here's the bizarre thing. A lot of these young girls, after 2-3 years of helping them come out of that lifestyle, and you're always hoping to lead them to Christ so they can find that ultimate strength in Him, but it's amazing that some of these young girls in the teenage years, they choose to go back. Now,
I know.
I can't even grasp this. It just seemed like they would be just so overwhelmed with gratitude, but I think it's the only life they've known.
Yeah.
And especially if they don't trust Christ and don't feel that that's where they can find ultimate meaning. But it's really been surprising to us. That sometimes happens.
And the fifth one?
The fifth one is disaster relief, crisis ministry, and that's international too. When the Israel-Hamas war started, I was there 3 weeks after the war started, as we were using what had been a conference center, camp center, that the International Mission Board has owned for 60 years. They wouldn't be able to buy it now, but they have 60 acres there near Tel Aviv. So we were setting up housing, that whole conference center for displaced families down there in the southern region where Hamas had attacked. And, they probably had at one point hundreds of thousands of displaced Israeli families that were just looking for a place to go.
Sure.
They had to leave. But then the earthquake in Turkey.
I think tsunamis in the past.
I've never seen something like that earthquake.
In Turkey, really?
Antakya, which is the modern-day city of Antioch, the biblical town that you read about in Acts 10, 11, 12, and there, Antioch took up a collection for the Mother Church in Jerusalem when they were going through a tough time. So I thought it was really cool that we were able to be there to help these small Christian churches, because it's overwhelmingly Muslim folks in Turkey, help these small Christian churches in Turkey. It's kind of like returning the favor, thinking about what they did in Acts to help the Mother Church in a time of need. Well, here was Sin Belief going in. Do we have time to tell one exciting story?
Sure.
Very small churches helping with we were helping with housing, we were helping with purified water. Y'all, when we were walking the streets of Antakya, it's a metro area of about 400,000. The buildings were all so leaning and crooked. I really think 90 to 95% of all homes and buildings were either demolished or uninhabitable.
Right.
50,000 plus people killed. We just walked by hundreds of people sitting on the sidewalk as front-end loaders were just digging through the rubble to try to find their family members. I mean, it was so gut-wrenching to go through that. But those little bitty churches ministered to as many as they could. And that happened in February. In December, they invited, there was a center about 10 miles from Antioch, which is the coastal town that's talked about in Acts chapter 12, I believe it is. And in that coastal town, there were still some ballrooms of hotels that were available. So they invited all the people they had ministered to during that year to come to have a Christmas banquet. And 1,500 people showed up. This overwhelmingly Muslims. They couldn't get them all in this convention banquet hall, but they got to tell the story of Jesus and why he came. I mean, now that's exciting. But once again, when you win the right to be heard, when you show the love of Jesus in a time of crisis, the most hardened person when it comes to Christ is often have their hearts softened for that. That's just one of the. I hear hundreds of stories.
You know what's really neat is, I mean, as we hear these stories, in my mind, I'm thinking, how much did that cost? How much did that cost? How much did that cost? And then I think, the generosity of Southern Baptists.
Absolutely. They could not have done that if Southern Baptists had not been giving to missions and enabling us to surprise 100%, them with it.
100%.
It's just really...
And there's never enough. That's the reality. You know, I was calculating the other day, 3,700 missionaries out in the field. Yeah. We have about 300, here based in the United States. And when you look at the money that goes towards the IMB, that's a very small salary to cover just the living expenses. Oh, and then you've got the travel, and you've got all the regulations, and yet our people are out there.
They are,
and it's because for years people have given, things have been built. They're ready to go.
That's right.
And then when things happen, people give generously.
So thankful.
Right?
So can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
Your IMB/NAM. So do you get Annie? Do you get Lottie? How does Send Relief get funded?
There are resources there. It is largely through the cooperative program, though.
Okay, CP.
That all of our salaries and the operating costs are covered for Send Relief, so that 100% of the gifts can go specifically to ministry as the needs arise. So very thankful. And as you mentioned this too, the first couple of years I was really burdened about we're a drop in the bucket with so many crises. I mean, just such a small amount, even though it's millions that have been given through churches and individuals to send relief. It's so small, like the Bill Gates Foundation. I mean, giving, mega billions to combat world hunger. But what the Lord kept convicting me on, there's nothing about Jesus in the Gates Foundation.
Right.
They may meet a temporary need on the journey to hell, but that doesn't help with the ultimate need of dealing with lostness and the need for salvation in Christ. So even though we are small, and our budget with Send Relief and what we've done this year, probably over the past year, was about $13 million of resources that went out around the world. But in all those cases, the name of Jesus. In all those cases, the opportunity for the gospel to be shared.
That's right.
And that is the important thing.
Right.
We can't resolve the hunger crisis and all this,
right,
these crises around the world, but we want to make a difference. Every life that we touch, it matters to that life.
Sure.
And the Lord has really convicted me of that when it's so small compared to how great the problems
I
are
would
out
say it's the faithfulness of the calling that God has given us to do the Great Commission work with what He has entrusted us with.
That's right.
And we can't do more than what He has entrusted us with.
Yeah.
And so we have to find ourselves faithful to do the work that God has called us wherever it might be.
That's right.
And we're supposed to go push back against darkness. And Send Relief is doing that. IMB is doing that. North American Mission Board is doing that.
Yeah.
Collectively, we as a Southern Baptist family
exciting.
Are finding ourselves faithful decade after decade, even with the attacks that we have from the enemy against our family, right?
Well, and churches. Our family brings it on ourselves. So
for sure. Oh, absolutely. That's a whole podcast on its own.
It is, but I mean, really, when you think about it, we bring so many, because of our sinfulness, we bring so much of this on ourselves.
Yes.
And the Lord uses us with His grace anyway, which is really what's so amazing. I mean, we can be sorry as hang when it comes to being a Christian.
We can be like the Church of Corinth at times.
Oh, my goodness. People, how many times as a pastor, we need to get back to the New Testament church. I say, well, which one?
Yeah, right.
The church at Corinth or the church at Philippi?
Can I go back? Because you had mentioned, Bryant, about the human trafficking, and it seems like California, we're kind of like a hub for that work. So can you tell our listeners a little bit about?
LA is such a
well, and even Fresno. I mean, the reality
reality
is
the climate, y'all think about that too,
right? And the international airports.
Yeah, that's right.
They say that out of Fresno, Central California, if those young ladies get moved out of there to LA or Sacramento, it's just a matter of hours before you'll never find them again.
Wow.
That's how fast they move them through the state.
So for people who have a burden for that.
Yeah, there is work that can be done. Daryl Spears, who is the director of the ministry center in the LA area, him and his wife lead the ministry where they give care packets. They go out with an RV that has been fixed up for the ladies to be able to go in there and get cleaned. And they provide for them clothes. They provide for them just a lot of love. And
Vegas and New Orleans are the other two major ministry centers
places, right. And the reality is that a lot of our churches, what they've done is that they've come alongside to create the packets because it's only the ladies that go out to do the ministry, and there's protection.
That's right.
But God has really just blessed the teams to be able to do the work where they're at, and it's really incredible.
And not just anybody can do it. Right. You really do have to have trained people with the trauma that they've had to deal with. It's really not easy.
I heard from Daryl that they have had 40 women in the last couple of years that have been rescued, and half of those are underage young girls.
Wow.
So it's a very hard ministry.
It's a sickening evil.
Right.
It really is a sickening evil, but it is rampant. They say every year when the Super Bowl occurs, it's just massive. Right. What's going on?
Whatever city it's in, it's just horrible.
But we have a hub here in California, so California Southern
Baptists
can get engaged.
That's right.
With
LA
that.
is really a key area of battling.
100%.
Yeah. So what are your plans now that you're in your second retirement?
Well, I hadn't hit it yet. But
you're
the
coming
end of
on
March,
your second retirement.
I'll have to say I don't know And that's a terrible answer, I know. And yet God knows, and I like that because he'll reveal it. But I do hope I can maybe do interim pastorates. I had one right at the beginning of COVID. Part of what Kevin and Paul wanted me to do was not take interims so that I would be able to preach in as many different churches carrying the banner of Sin Relief. Well, COVID started. So many churches were having church in a camera. It was just nobody even there. Right. And so I wasn't getting any invitations to preach. So this opportunity came up in East Texas in a really great church that had gone through terrible trauma. Their pastor was killed tragically in a car wreck, and it was right at the beginning of COVID, and they couldn't even have a funeral for the pastor. The way everything was during that time. It was terrible. So this church asked me to consider it. So I called Paul and Kevin. I said, I know you guys asked me not to do an interim, but I'm not being asked to preach anywhere. So would you be open? And they laughed. They said, look, it's COVID. Go ahead. But in doing that, Sarah, I really saw the value of spending 10 months with a church, helping them go through the grief, first of all, and helping them to get back on mission in preparation for the coming of the pastor. So I would, and plus you get to preach to the same folks. It's been one and done in this role with Sin Relief, which has been very meaningful. Right.
Yeah.
But when you've been a pastor most of your life and you can see people on a regular basis, take them through series and all. Yeah. I miss that.
Watch the discipleship happening.
I miss that.
Well, but the Lord the biggest win will be that your wife will be very happy that you're not going to focus all your attention on her.
Yes, we need to ask about that again, see how she's feeling about that now. But also, I do feel grandparenting time has been neglected over these last 5 years because there's so much travel in this role.
Yeah.
And they're 5 to 20 years old, so time is moving on.
Wow,
want to have a little
5
more
to
freedom.
20. Congratulations.
Yes, well, Ann and I have been married over 50 years, so that's a lot of grandchildren that can pop up along the way.
Wow.
Well, we're really thankful for you and all that you've done to sort of launch Send Relief and the work that's happening there. There are more projects that people can get engaged with, right?
Absolutely. I urge you to go to the Send Relief website, sendrelief.org. And you can just scroll through there and see many different ways to volunteer, to give, to pray, to find out more about what's happening.
In other countries and in the United States.
That's right. It's global.
Right.
It is global.
Right. So that's really exciting.
We had some missionaries that were here watching us do the Serve Tour so that they could take it to Africa and
that's right, and
Peru.
Lima, Peru, and those Serve tours are
that's that other country,
South Carolina.
That's right. And the international ones are a week long. So like your local church trains 8 to 20 people, and they go for a full week internationally. And man, we have one in Armenia. I knew nothing about Armenia. It's right beside Turkey. Other side is Azerbaijan. North of it is the old Soviet Georgia, and south is Iran.
Oh.
Matter of fact, that president of Iran crashed near that area. We saw the when we were in Armenia for the Serve Tour, the helicopters were flying over from Iran trying to find all that. Because Mount Ararat is right there on the border in Turkey, and you'd see it in Armenia. But anyway, real quickly, we had maybe a dozen churches, small, and wherever they met, they cleared everything out, and all those churches had a medical clinic. That week was all doctors, nurses, pharmacists, physical therapists, and for a full week, they offered a medical clinic where they usually met.
That's wonderful.
Y'all, the people flooded in there.
I bet.
And the people they led to Christ. But one thing we learned that was very important, you got to have good interpreters, because with you come in and you're having a heart attack, if you start treating a broken ankle, you've really got a problem.
Yes.
So the interpreters were very important in communicating what had to happen.
Oh my gosh.
So if you speak another language, go volunteer on a Serve Tour.
That story is going to lead us into the last segment here with you, okay? Because you're making us laugh. We've asked you to prepare a funny story to just make us all laugh and to remind us that ministry can be fun at times.
Well, I hope this will be funny to your listeners, but I have chuckled so many times. 1 year as a pastor at Johnson Ferry there in North Atlanta, I was doing a series through the Gospel of John, looking at the miracles of Jesus. So the first miracle is Jesus turning the water into wine. And we had 3 services in our activity center and 3 different hours, and then services in the traditional worship at the same time. But anyway, At 8:30, preached the first sermon on that series, Jesus Turned the Water into Wine. And our new deacon chairman was sitting there. Well, our deacons, we have 2 or 3 that serve the Lord's Supper every Sunday to individuals that want to have it every Sunday. Okay. Small group, 20 to 30 people each week, and there's a special room for it. And they go and prepare the elements, the bread and the tray, and as they do that, then they go individually serve those folks. Well, he walked into the room to prepare the elements, and they were already prepared. He thought, boy, this staff is really on the ball. This is great. So he took the tray, and he took the bread. He was just reflecting on the sermon of Jesus turning the water into wine, and he served the juice to the first person who knelt there. And the guy said, whoa, we got real wine today.
Oh.
He just heard the sermon on Jesus turning the water into wine. He's trying to process all this.
Grape juice.
Well, long story short, we always serve the Lord's Supper for our Christmas Eve services. And they had left the tray in there that was unused for about 3 weeks, and it had fermented. So Johnson Ferry pioneered another path, and that was serving real wine unintentionally for the communion service.
Is this a Southern Baptist church?
Yes.
I'm scandalized.
That must have been a real fun service.
Well, you know, if Jesus does it, let's don't question Jesus. Let's don't question Jesus.
Oh, my goodness.
We're not going to call him a sinner.
Oh, mercy.
So we got a lot of laughs about that. That deacon chairman, there were so many things going through his mind as he had just heard that sermon on
That's
this.
the craziest part.
So anyway, we quickly repaired the situation.
And now that's their job. That's their job.
That's right.
Well, is there anything you want to say to California Southern Baptists while we have you here?
Love California and love the fact that, in the South, we've had to deal more in our churches with cultural Christianity. People that, just been a part of church life. They think they're Christian because they believe the Bible and things like that. They're just as lost as they can be, a lot of those folks. And I've always felt in California, there's a lot less cultural Christianity. If you're going to go to church, if you're going to be engaged in a church, you really are saying something that's different about your life. I've always thought it'd been so fun to pastor in California. So for all you guys out there that are serving in the churches where it's hard and you feel to be such a minority in so many cases, what an opportunity. What an opportunity to carry the gospel into a culture where there's just so much spiritual lostness. Right. And we have, by the way, there's just as much in the South. All of the United States, really, today, it's not much different anywhere because there's no such thing as a true Bible Belt anymore. But we still deal with that cultural Christianity that sometimes people get inoculated against the real thing because they think they're a Christian with just some of that, culture there.
Yeah.
So I feel like all you folks that serve in California, what an opportunity you have. I think it's awesome. And to see the things that happen, and Pete, what y'all are doing with the California Convention, and just, when Johnson Ferry was planning new churches in the San Francisco Bay Area for a 10-year period, we fell in love with California and the openness people had. I thought there would be a lot more antagonism towards us and all, and not like we weren't there actually planning the churches. We were bringing in planners, or either they grew up in California and connecting them and supporting them and all. But I was amazed at the incredible openness.
Amen.
I think the opportunity is rich here.
Well, as you finish your time being the send relief face, the leader there, the servant, I just want to say thank you for your faithful work.
Yeah.
Well, you're right, mighty kind. It's been a real joy.
And may God continue to give you just the passion and the heart for whatever He has next for you. And may you just love on them grandkids and that beautiful wife of yours, my sister Ann, and you just continue to have a wonderful time serving the Lord. And thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
Well, glad to do it. And I will say this about what's to come. I really want to keep preaching the gospel.
Yes.
However God leads that.
Yes.
Because I identify with Paul when he says, woe is me if I preach not the gospel. Ann will tell you, if I go 2 or 3 weeks and haven't preached, oh my goodness, I'm not as nice a husband, kind of ornery.
Oh dear.
I just feel this Call him.
Gotta get it
to
out.
Get into the word. That's right. To get it out.
Gotta
That's
get
right.
it out.
That's right. That's right.
That's fantastic. I thought you were going to say if any California pastor needs a break, we have an interim ready to come
It'd be
to
a
the West
long
Coast.
flight every Saturday. And then fly back on Sunday. Oh, my goodness. That would be that'd be a challenge.
That's fun. Well, we'll be sure to put all the information about the upcoming Serve tours that are happening.
Great.
You know, there's one in Virginia coming up. So if people want to go out and help another state, what a great opportunity that would be.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening, everybody. As always, we have an email address, podcast@csbc.com. Thanks for listening.
Have a good one, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.